Final Fantasy VIII holds a special place in the hearts of many Final Fantasy fans, and for good reason. It had a great cast of characters, a fantastic score, and featured some amazing FMV sequences. But while other titles have received copious amounts of ports, remasters, and remakes over the years, fans of Final Fantasy VIII have always been left feeling rather aggrieved, as that particular game often seemed to be ignored. There was the PlayStation 1 Classic release back in 2009. This came out on the PS3 and PSP, and support for the PlayStation Vita was added in 2012, and the PC version from the year 2000 was re-released on Steam in 2013, but almost no considerations were taken for how hardware had changed in that time. It meant that if you wanted to play Final Fantasy VIII, your options were kind of restricted, and there were numerous theories as to why this was the case. But the real reason was ultimately very simple. The original source code for Final Fantasy VIII wasn't ever archived. This was explained by Alex Donaldson on Twitter, as he was responding to comments about Final Fantasy VIII not being included within the Legacy of Final Fantasy campaign that was announced on the 13th of September 2008. He noted that during that particular era, Square often didn't keep anything once it was completed. They just wiped it clean and moved on to the next project. He rounded it out by saying that if Square Enix were going to re-release Final Fantasy VIII as a proper port, it would be a lengthy and costly process. But some 9 months later, Square Enix announced during their press conference at E3 2019 that they would be releasing Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. They'd known for some time that fans were desperate to replay this classic entry, but they just needed time as they worked on attempting to rebuild the game from the ground up. And key staff members from the original game have been helping French developer Dotemu with this process. Hiroshi Harada, who was a battle programmer on Final Fantasy VIII, has returned to oversee new adaptations after working on the Final Fantasy X-2 HD remaster. Tomohiro Kiyano, who was a character modeler on Final Fantasy VIII and recently served as a character model director on World of Final Fantasy, has also returned to oversee the creation of new 3D character models. And Tetsuya Nomura has also been helping, as he no doubt wants to make sure that he maintains his reputation for always working on up to 10 games simultaneously. In reality, Square Enix has gone through a similar process before with Final Fantasy 7 and 9, games also from that same era. Shinji Hashimoto even revealed to The Hollywood Reporter earlier this year that the mobile, Steam and Switch versions of Final Fantasy 9 were recreated using the Unity engine, but unlike the ports for those two games, Final Fantasy VIII has the remastered tagline because there are quite a few differences between the original release and the remastered version that's going to be released on the 3rd of September 2019. And much like we did in preparation for the release of Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age, we figured it would be rather useful to run through every single tiny detail that's been changed, with the hopes that it will help to inform your decisions around whether or not you want to dive in and play Final Fantasy VIII for the first time, or whether you're just debating whether or not you want to purchase it all over again. Well, that, and because we've been inundated with requests for us to make a video about Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. Alright, so our first port of call is to shoot down some of those nasty rumours that have been rumbling around to make sure that expectations are set in the right way, and that relates to voice acting and the potential for a physical release. Soon after Final Fantasy VIII Remastered was announced, a user on NeoGAF was digging through the official website source code and noticed that the open graph and meta description tags made reference to there being English and Japanese voiceover work included in the remaster. This would have been a huge deal, but unfortunately it turned out that whoever was responsible for editing that particular piece of text screwed up. They had just copied a piece of text from somewhere else and forgot to change it appropriately. There is no voice acting. And right when the game was announced, certain retailers such as Gamefly and PlayAsia also listed Final Fantasy VIII Remastered as a physical product, but they have now been removed after Square Enix published a press release on their Japanese website stating very clearly that it would be a digital-only release on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get on to some of the changes, and we're better placed to start than with the game's presentation. Over the years, much has been made about the in-game visuals of Final Fantasy VIII, specifically how they just haven't aged that well at all. And this all became even more pronounced back in 2013 when a Reddit user called Ozzy Mustaine made a rather timeless meme using this ballroom scene as his inspiration. Now, I'm not going to say the meme spurred Square Enix on, but they clearly wanted to make sure that Final Fantasy VIII's graphics were given some TLC for the remaster, as almost every area has undergone some major renovations, and the most obvious area that this can be seen is with the character models. Similar to what we saw with the Final Fantasy X-10-2 HD remaster, each of the major characters has received a significant facelift. In the case of Squall, he now looks much closer to what we recently saw within Dissidia NT, and Square Enix made note of his improved visuals by responding to the aforementioned meme. Rinoa's face has also received similar treatment, while Laguna's looks more akin to his appearance within Dissidia Duodecim. Other characters such as Ward and Kiros have also been spruced up considerably, and they serve as a fantastic example of the wider changes that have been made to character models, as their armour is way more detailed now. Outside of the character models, time has also been spent on giving various objects, such as the weapons, much more fidelity. Enemy models have also been upgraded, and the Guardian forces and their associated summoning sequences have been overhauled, as shown by this before and after comparison with Bahamut. In terms of wider functions, well, almost everything has had anti-aliasing applied to smooth out some of the rough edges. Backgrounds have been upscaled and put through bilinear filtering to hide pixelation, although this does make them seem a little bit blurry upon close inspection. The world map and battle scenes have also been put through a similar process, but they've been upgraded using a linear filter instead. To make sure the improved models look good in action, the team has also worked to enhance the animations that relate to various spells and specific commands that can be used, and modifications have also been made to the user interface. There's a new font in play, for example, and the menus overall have been made to look a bit neater. As a final point on the visuals, the glorious FMV sequences have been enhanced to 1080p, but they will unfortunately remain in the original 4:3 ratio as opposed to being upgraded to 16:9. Also relating to presentation is the music. Perhaps one of the biggest bugbears of the Steam re-release was with the game's soundtrack. By default, it would use the computer's sound chip to play MIDI files, and given that this was no longer common practice within today's gaming landscape, it sounded horrible. Thankfully, the modding community came to the rescue via the Roses and Wine mod from Daniel Burke, but given how frustrating the whole experience was, many of you will hopefully be pleased to hear that Final Fantasy VIII Remastered will feature the original PlayStation soundtrack. Perhaps they could have gone one step further and attempted to remaster parts of the soundtrack as they did with Final Fantasy X and 12, but then again, given the mixed receptions of those two remastered soundtracks, perhaps leaving it alone was the best option. From a gameplay perspective, the team has implemented a couple of modifiers to help modernize the game. You will now be able to increase the game's speed by 3 times, but at this point it's unclear what that actually relates to. On the official website, it clearly states that this will allow scenes to be played at this speed, and it's accompanied by a screenshot from an FMV. But on the PlayStation blog, Ben Stein, who's a senior manager of product marketing, said this feature could not be used during certain sequences, which included FMVs. If true, this would change the high speed mode which appeared within the Steam version. That particular implementation had performance issues, as FMVs would play at differing speeds at an average of 5 times faster, something which was known to cause crashes. Another addition is the ability to turn off random encounters, something that has been borrowed from the Unity version of Final Fantasy IX. This particular mechanic was available within the original game thanks to the Encounter None ability, which could be learnt from Diablos, but now it will be something that you can just toggle on and off, rendering that particular ability somewhat useless. They've also added the option to turn off some of the timed content that appears throughout, and this has been done to compensate for the fact that you can play the game at 3 times the intended speed. To help make the game much quicker and easier, depending on how you want to look at it, Final Fantasy VIII Remastered will also implement the Battle Assist booster from the Steam version across all versions. This gives characters maximum HP at all times, the ATB bar is always filled, allowing for instant turns, and limit breaks are always available when it is your turn. As is always the case though, there are plenty of Steam exclusive features outside of the ability to customize your system settings to improve the graphics. With the Steam version, you will be able to obtain all items except for a few key items, have infinite gil, obtain all triple triad cards, max out stock of all obtained magic, unlock all limit breaks, unlock all learnable abilities from GFs you've acquired, and also maximize the levels of the GFs you've acquired. What you won't be able to do anymore though is have access to the magic booster, which instantly stocked your inventory with 100 of certain types of spells. And it also doesn't look like you'll be able to use the 9999 booster, which made all normal attacks, certain limit breaks, and certain GF attacks deal 9999 damage. Something else that has been removed is Chocobo World. This wasn't included within the original PlayStation release outside of Japan, as it was part of the Pocket Station initiative, but it was included with the PC version that was released a year later. The Steam version also contained Chocobo World, but they've decided to remove that functionality for Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. Instead, the items that could previously be obtained using this game must now be obtained via Angelo search, and to compensate for this, they've increased the probability of obtaining items through this ability. And with that, I think that's everything. The biggest change is no doubt the visuals, but I personally think it's nice that they're adding features into other areas too, as they help to cater for varying playstyles and situations. It's just a shame that there are so many of these abilities that are exclusive to Steam. Nonetheless, it's great that from the 3rd of September 2019 onwards, Final Fantasy VIII will be playable on current generation systems, and ultimately that's the main thing. How many of you are intending to pick it up on release though? Hopefully you guys enjoyed this rundown, and if you did, then please do consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. To celebrate the release of the game, we are pleased to announce that we're planning to do a small run of Final Fantasy VIII themed content, so make sure you hit that bell to get notified immediately when we publish new content. Alright guys, this is Daryl signing out. I'd like to extend a big thank you to all our Patreon and YouTube membership supporters, and of course, a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.